Howdy folks, Little John out in the brewery, and I'll have a quick chat in a second about the subject of the day, which is hops, and how they've changed how we brew and the way things have been brewed and the beers we're drinking and stuff. Before we do that, I'm just clearing a bit of stuff. Got a few packages today, so I want to quickly touch on this as we go. Before I do, firstly, shout out to all the Patreons and Little Johns who support the channel immensely and allow me to do a lot of the stuff I do, experimenting wise. And that leads into particularly this. Two extract kits here. Black Rock Pale Ale and a Mangrove Jack's Classic Australian Bitter. These have been sent to me by one of the Patreons. Ray, thank you very much. That's now the second lot of extract tins that he has sent me as part of Extractaganza. So I'm thinking there needs to be something, probably he's going his way very soon. I've just picked up my current delivery of my monthly beer pack. It's actually funny, it included a face mask from Source Brewing. I'd like to think we're pretty much beyond the requirement of wearing face masks, but anyway, who doesn't like getting something for nothing? But this is this month's pack. I'll stop doing the lot of the reviews on the pack itself. But I've discussed these monthly packs before, and they're good value, especially if you don't have access to real easily to a bottle shop. We necessarily can't get there. For this pack particularly, $59 a month, delivered to my door. I get eight beers. So this month I've got a Pale Ale from Sunday Roast Brewing. Oh, a Deeds, that's unusual. The Fiery Gates of Hell's Lager. Definitely not one. It's not one of the $18 cans, but don't often get Deeds with this mob, so I'm pretty happy. The Colonial Sour, the Southwest Sour, I'm pretty sure I've had that before, but that's not a bad drop. That I'll get through that, no problem at all. Dad and Dave's Pills. They're out of Brookvale. 6 strings. The Creme de la Creme Cream Brulee Imperial Stout. Ooh, sounds nice. Big beer. Let's see if 6 strings can wow me with this beer. What's this one? Manly Hops. Pittwater Road Manly. Okay, I've not heard of these guys before. Single hop hazy pale. Okay. Oh, this looks like a 5 barrels. It is. Oh, okay. 5 barrels Pacific Peak. You may have, if you've followed the Facebook, you would have seen I was drinking one of these a little while ago whilst down the cabin down the coast. And it was bloody nice. So I will certainly enjoy that one. And a double dry hopped double Nipa from Temple Brewing Company. That should be interesting. Oh, okay, we've got a lot of info on there just quickly. 24 grams a litre of dry hops, so very much interested in that. Oh, I've got myself another keychain bottle opener. I've got 2 now. Excellent. I'm never going to have a problem opening the beers. Beautiful. So that's that. we'll get to the subject of the today's video very shortly. Getting this done the bloody way. And this is the other fella, the bench spoke, the Decent 21 Russian Imperial Stout, 4 cans thereof, which have just arrived. Pretty happy to snavel this one. They don't last real long, this issue, and this should be another big one. And I never mind getting a new drinking vessel. Let's have a quick look at that. Glass, the Bensburg glass was pretty good quality. Okay, just a little it's almost a snifter glass, but anyway, that'll be quite nice for drinking those fellas from, no doubt. So there will be a taster on this coming in the near future. That one I will be doing a tester on. Anyway, so let's get on with it. What I want to quickly talk about is hops. That's in the title. The changing face of beer and how hops is being, particularly how hops are being used, is that's the biggest thing in beer. Yeah, in the current scene. Anyone who's brewed for any sort of length of time, any time over more than, even sort of the last 2 years, has certainly grown up with the old school traditional methods of hopping. And I'm talking like a 60-minute boil for your bittering addition, and then a 10, 15, 20-minute addition for some flavour, and then a late 5-minute or a flame out addition to get some nice aroma into your beer. And that was the extent of it, and you played around with those parameters to get different flavours and aromas in your beer and use different hops to get different effects. And that all started in a big way about, I'd say, maybe 10 years ago, when the craft beer really started coming back on the scene. When I first got back into the brewing, which is now a bit over 10 years ago, everything was still very traditional with the hopping. Dry hopping was just starting to become a thing. You had breweries were just starting to play around with dry hopping. Some breweries had played around for a while, but hadn't really been taken on as a whole market thing where it was being done widely, and certainly it wasn't really being done in the home brew sort of sense. But it just started to come in. So you saw small amounts of dry hopping, and they were small, 20 or 30 grams dry hopped into a brew. Had that little bit extra, and didn't matter whether it was kits or all grain or full extract. It was only small amounts, and then slowly that dry hopping amount started becoming more. But generally it was a simple dry hop. It was towards the end of ferment, generally very close to the end of ferment, for a couple of days before you bottled the beer. And that was sort of it. Ramon? Oh, you're sitting there. Let's get on this. Sorry, weird thing going on with the dogs. Anyway, so the dry hopping was mainly just sort of was one drop, and was very late in the whole ferment process. But that standard hopping through the brew was still sort of happening, and then slowly that dry hopping started to be, I said, it was getting bigger, and it was starting to happen a bit earlier in the ferment, and as a result the hopping in the beer was starting to change. So suddenly you found, particularly pale ales and IPAs, where the hops were being pulled back a little bit. They weren't going in quite as early in the boil. There was less going in late in the boil, and more happening very late. A lot more was happening in that last 5 minutes, or even that the flame out addition was starting to becoming a really big thing, where there was a large amount of hops getting dropped in at flame out, and then left in while the beer was cooling. So essentially, it started off, it was being left in during the whirlpool, just while it cooled. And then these things were all starting to produce different effects, different flavours were coming out. Hops were being perceived in whole different ways. What a certain hop would do at 20 minutes and say a flame out was very different to what it would do at flame out and then with a big dry hop. And that just started increasing. That whole drag towards later in the boil and more dry hopping it's become more and more. And as everyone's aware, particularly the NEPA style particularly, started dragging in massive amounts of hops, double dry hop, these double dry hopped IPAs and triple dry hopped, and started becoming much more prevalent, and there's a lot more of them around. And suddenly we started seeing beers where that bittering addition sort of almost pretty much disappeared. They got dragged back, so much so that there's a mountain of beers at the moment where there's no hop actually goes into the boil. The boil is stopped before any hops go in. They go in a bloody flame out, or in a lot of cases they go into a whirlpool, where the whirlpool has changed from being that process of the wort being agitated while it was cooling to actually cooling partially, down to that 80-85 degree mark, and then holding it there, whirlpooling and dropping the hops in and letting them swim around for 20 minutes. And there's a mountain of beers at the moment where that's the first hop addition. So there's nothing going on in the boil at all. And then that's backed up with 2 or 3, sometimes up to 3 dry hop amounts. Sometimes in that first dry hop straight in the fermenter. 2 days later, day 5. In different processes. And starts bringing in things like biotransformation, where you're getting a totally different reaction between hops and the acids and the activity of the yeast. And producing again totally different flavours from the same hops than what you're getting in a whirlpool or a flame out, or what you're getting at day 5. But the big thing, and the biggest impact this has had on us as home brewers, and particularly if you are really into the crafty side, and you're brewing and you're looking for keeping up with modern styles and replicating what's going on, or if you're just new to the scene where you're coming into the home brew and it's like, okay, well, this is how these styles are made. You have this problem now where it has made the creation of certain beers very, very pricey. When I started 10 years ago, got back into the brewing. Not started, that was fucking donkey years ago, but when I got back into it again, well, I haven't got my books. I should have found my book. My first Australian Pale Ale probably would have had somewhere in the vicinity of probably maybe 60 grams of hops all up. Give me a sec, I can see two of my books there. I'll see one of them there. Okay, yeah, there's two books sitting over in the cupboard. They're not real old ones. This is from 2017. So I just want to have a look at there's something in here I could sort of refer to. But the amount of hops you're using has just increased so much. Okay, that's bloody. Yeah. The dogs have it. No plastic. There's a plastic outdoor mat on the floor. And the dog must be just rubbing on it and squeaking. It sounds like there's a trapped mouse in a cage, but it's in a trap. But it's just a dog that's. Anyway, so I've got here. This is an IPA made back in 2017 September, so about 4 years ago, and it's got 40, 70, 85 grams of hops in the boil, and it had 100 grams of dry hop. Now, that was at the time, it was a fairly hoppy sort of a beer. That's sort of fairly big on the hopping. I haven't actually done a good bloody IPA for a while. But like I said, that can I've just pulled out with the double dry hop NEPA, 24 grams a litre of hops just in the dry hop. Yeah, that's a 20. So you talk a 23 litre batch. You're talking close to half a kilo of hops or thereabouts. That's just the dry hop. You've got, there's another bloody 100 grams, probably somewhere around 100 grams. Well, actually, there's probably 200 grams. In a whirlpool. So this massive amount of hops that are going into these beers, and for us, like I said, we've gone from where 100, 200 grams tops was sort of really big for a beer, to where 400 and 500, just double or even sometimes triple the amount of hops going into these beers. Now, given that on a whole, hops are the dearest part of your beer, certainly by weight. Well, they are now. This is the thing. When you're putting together a beer and you had maybe $25 worth of grain, and this is at full retail. This isn't bulk prices. If you're buying your grain by the kilo for each brew, you're paying $25 for your grain. You're then paying maybe $10 to $20 for your hops. That same beer is you're now paying $45 for your hops, because instead of buying a 100 gram bag for $9 or two of those, you're now buying half a kilo or even a kilo. So many places where you're seeing hops being sold at the moment, Cover the Hopping Mechanism. There's other places, Hop Cartel. There's so many suppliers. Off the top of my head, like Mates Rates, Places that are selling hops in bulk, and the bulk packs are now half kilo and kilo packets or more. Yeah, some of these places are actually selling 5 kilos of hops directly to the public. So it's not uncommon to sit and see a kilo of hops, and granted that per 100 gram price is a lot cheaper than what it did used to be, but it's made a significant increase in the cost of beer. And yes, I get, and it's all relative. If you're brewing a double dry hopped IPA, the price that we're paying, the cost for that beer, is significantly lower than the cost of going and buying it commercially. And it's always the same with any beer. The cost is very comparative. But for a newer brewer who is coming in and going, okay, I want to get into home brew, I want to sort of make cheap, as a way to make some cheapish beer and save myself some money, and suddenly someone's saying, well, you're going to need to spend $40 on hops just for this one beer, and you might not like the effect that you get with them. It's daunting and overwhelming for a lot of people. And there's so much to understand with the hops themselves when you're using them. When you're starting to try and put recipes together, and you're learning the relationships between hops and bitterness and flavour and aroma, and when to do it and when to get it and how long, and what you need to balance it up and all that sort of stuff. It's a lot it's a lot to learn, and trying to get your head around working with hundreds of grams of hops at a go. I don't know how a lot of brewers are doing it. I still, I look at recipes and go, can you put 300 grams of hops in that? To me, it still seems ludicrous. I still prefer for the most part a more traditionally hop beer. I do like pushing into them a bit more of the dry hopping. I have developed a bit more that way, but it still seems crazy to me to throw that amount of hops in. I still don't really. I don't get it. I can't work with it. I'm pushing large amounts on certain beers, but I still can't get myself into that idea of going, okay, let's put massive amounts of hops into a beer. And I'm probably not that far off. I'm probably doing it before the end of this year. I think this is the year I really need to get in and really do a big hobby beer. I've done some big beers over the years. Like I've done 100 IBU IPAs, but again in a very, very different way to what a lot of 100 IBUs would be done now. I've done 100 IBU IPA, which would probably have half the amount of hops that a lot of these current 40 IBU IPAs are using. But that's the difference. That's the big change. It's such changing the way the hop is expressed in the beer. That late hopping, it's with that getting rid of that all the bitterness. It's taken beer from that hoppy, bitter-edged, bitey beverage to this soft, fluffy, polite sort of a beer. Despite the fact it's got an intense amount of fruit flavours, for me that's just taking it well away from being beer. That's not what, for me. I'm still a bit traditional that way. I still like my beer to at least feel and look like beer to some degree. And this new just big bang and stuff just doesn't really particularly work for me. But yeah, I'm yet to really find a style that I haven't found good things in with any of them. Even the Neepers, like I'm not a massive fan of Neepers, but there are some out there that are really nice. No doubt about it. I think it can be said of any style. There's good and bad in all of them. The biggest thing really is with anything, it's finding what works for your taste and your palate. And from the brew side, what works with that, and then what also works with your budget, and where you're willing to spend your money, and finding that middle ground, the place between cost and the flavour and beer that you're getting out of it, and finding that middle ground. I know this probably hasn't really educated anybody on what to do, and again, because there's so much. I've said it before with hops. I could sit here for 4 hours, and talk about hops and how to use them and what they do in your beer and what you're going to get, what results and blah blah blah, and still walk away going, well, there's another 4 hours to talk about. If you're a brewer at home and you're trying to find your way and you're not really getting your head around it, go to a local brew club if you've got one. Talk to some, get involved with some brewers in your local area that you can go and sit down with, and you can have a chat with, over a couple of beers on a Saturday or Sunday afternoon, and actually talk to people and learn how they're doing it, and taste beers. Go, okay, no, this is the biggest problem with commercial beer. You don't know really how they're bloody actually going about hopping stuff. So you're not learning how to achieve what they've got. They tell you what hops they're using and rough process, but you're not learning. So to actually go and sit with other brewers where you can drink a beer and they can actually tell you exactly how they hopped it, with what hops and what process, so you can start to understand what that does in your beer. And this is again part of the issue I have. I'm fairly isolated. There's not a lot of local brewing going on, so I'm restricted in the amount of stuff I can sit down and do the same thing. I'm stuck with the same sort of parameters. I'm doing the same. I'm looking at beers and going, okay, I like that. And trying to work out how I can achieve that in my own beer, but not really not. So experimenting, then going, okay, making a batch and going through a brew day, going through the fermentation process, letting it age and condition, and then going, okay, well, I'm not real keen on exactly how that's turned out. Next time I'll change something. And that's a bloody long, slow process of working around to, potentially what you do or don't like, unless you're lucky enough to not out a bloody perfect recipe first time. So yeah, if you can get involved with other brewers and gain that information easier from a wider source without having to bloody brew 400 brews yourself, it's going to help you in the long run, and it's going to save you some money, because you're not going to waste bloody big money on hops and beers, and you're not particularly maybe you're not going to enjoy as much as you could. Okay, but anyway, that's me done. I'll call it quits for the day. As always, if you've got any comments, any questions, stick them down the bottom. Hops, some massive subject, but put it down there. As always, guys, Patreons, thank you very much. Subscribers, thank you as well. That all helps the channel. Hit the like button, it helps as well. These things all make sure the channel keeps going and we can play around, and I can do experimental stuff, like playing around with different hops and different ways of using them and seeing what they do. It's all part of what will continue to happen. I'd love to be able to knock it out every day, every other day, knock out something new, to be constantly trying new processes and new methods, but it's just not possible. Yeah, we can only dream. But anyway, that's me for the day. I've not got a beer to cheers you with. I've just come out quickly after work and throw this one together before I do dinner. I'm not having a beer, it's a work night. I'm trying to avoid drinking on work nights, just for the old waistline, and to avoid the constant and always imposing threat of alcoholism, which is always overhanging anybody who fucking home brews. But anyway, I'll cheers you with an empty glass. But anyway, till I see you next time we're brewing beer, we drinking beer, or we talking beer. Good brewing. Cheers, guys.